Welcome to the Town of Corte Madera Planning Commission meeting for Tuesday, November 10th. Will you please call the roll, Adam?
Sure. Commissioner Metcalf.
Here.
Commissioner Bundy.
Here.
Commissioner Chase.
Here.
Commissioner Bendel.
Here.
Commissioner Rizzo.
Here.
I realize I still call the roll as I imagine you guys sitting at the dais. So.
It might happen one year. Okay, at this point in every night's meeting, we have the meeting open to public comment for that which is not on tonight's agenda. So if you have something you would like to comment on that is not on tonight's agenda, you can raise your hand or you can send an email into publiccomment@tcmmail.org. Tracy.
Yes, sir.
Anybody out there?
I don't see any hands raised and we don't have any emails either.
Okay. So then we will close the public comment section of tonight's agenda and move directly to the item that is on tonight's business item agenda, which is ADU Marin project. This will be interesting. Review and discussion of the ADU Marin project and recently launched ADU Marin webpage. Martha.
Yes. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, Chair Chase and members of the Commission. This evening, I will be providing you with an overview of the ADU Marin project, and you will not be taking any action on this item. The primary goal of the ADU Marin project is to provide information and resources to motivate homeowners to develop ADUs on their property. And it is a partnership between 10 cities and towns in the county, and Corte Madera used a portion of our SB2 planning grant funds to fund this project. And by collaborating on the project, we were able to save money since all of the towns shared the consultant services. As part of the project, a variety of resources have been developed. There is a website with the URL of adumarin.org. And if you haven't had a chance to visit the webpage yet, I suggest that you do. There's a lot of great information on it. It includes sample floor plans. There's homeowner stories about people who have built ADUs on their properties. There's also a variety of planning exercises. And there's a summary of all of the jurisdictions' rules who have participated in the project, along with a calculator to help homeowners estimate the cost of what it would cost to construct an ADU, as well as anticipated rents. There's also a workbook that has been developed and it's in the final stages, and this should be available soon. And the workbook will also be available on the webpage once it is finalized. And there were also a series of 3 webinars that were recently held, and I'll be going into a little bit more information about these on a later slide. There's a variety of information that is available on the webpage. This shows some of the options that homeowners can select on the homepage. There's a I'm looking for inspiration page, which includes information such as photos and floor plans, and also stories of people who have built ADUs in Marin County. On the I'm thinking about building an ADU, there's information on the different types of ADUs, as well as what potential costs can be and some of the benefits of constructing an ADU. On the I'm ready to build an ADU, a homeowner can explore the process and also get information such as what you should look for when you're picking an architect or a designer, and also the process of getting a building permit through the cities. And lastly, once the homeowner has built an ADU, they can look at sample lease agreements and learn about landlord and tenant rights. The webpage also includes a lot of graphics, which are designed to help convey information in an easy and straightforward manner. This shows the different types of ADUs that a homeowner could look into developing on their property. There are also more than a dozen floor plans that are available on the webpage. I've shown 3 of the floor plans on this slide. 2 were created from the conversion of existing space, and 1 is a new detached structure. There are also a variety of activities available on the webpage as well. And this is to help a homeowner as they start the process of considering developing an ADU on their property. And the activities include such things as brainstorming goals and concerns, gathering property information, drawing a sketch of their property to help visualize where the ADU would go on the property, and also a budgeting exercise. There were 3 webinars that were recently held, and these were broken down by geographical region. There was one on October 26th for Belvedere, Tiburon, and Sausalito. There's one on October 29th for Larkspur, Corte Madera, San Anselmo, and West Marin. And lastly, there was one on November 5th for Mill Valley, Ross, and Fairfax. And these webinars were all very well attended, which shows that there is a lot of interest from individuals in the county. And Corte Madera staff attended the October 29th webinar and answered questions. The webpage also includes spotlight videos, and these are designed to provide inspiration to people who are considering building an ADU. There are 4 spotlight videos, and one is of Donal and Brenda of Corte Madera. And we're actually going to be watching this video at the end of PowerPoint. And this shows some pictures of the ADU that Donna and Brenda constructed. They converted a detached garage into an ADU. And this picture shows the after product as well as pictures while it was under construction and the floor plan. And Brenda and Donal have, they rented out to a teacher at below market rate. So that concludes my PowerPoint. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and then I'm going to pull up the video. Okay, hopefully this works.
Not getting any volume. No volume, Martha.
There's no volume?
No.
No.
Do you want to stop it and let's try again, maybe?
Okay, I'll try it one more time. There was video on my end.
There's video. We see the video.
I know there was sound on my end too. So let me try one more time. And then if it doesn't work, maybe Tracy, if you want to maybe try on your computer.
It may just be a function of screen share that maybe volume isn't part of the screen share function. I'm not sure.
It should be. We'll give it one more try if
Okay.
after this, get it going. If not, we'll refer everyone to where to find it on their own.
I had looked at the videos. I thought they were quite well done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're excellent.
Did anybody else see the videos? Not, okay, some.
Oops, can you guys?
No, still no volume.
Okay.
We'll give it one more try on my side. You want me to, Martha?
Yes, please.
Oh, there's a button for it. Here we go.
I have today signed an executive order providing for the establishment of a Peace Corps on a temporary pilot basis. This corps will be a pool of trained men and women sent overseas by the United States government to help foreign countries meet their urgent needs for skilled manpower.
61 was when the call went out from President Kennedy, and then 63, Donal and I met while we were English teachers, and he said something like, well, you know, if we don't get together, we may never see each other again. So I think I asked you to marry me, did I? I can't remember. It's been too long. Oh, God. And then we wanted to to start a family, so we decided to look for a house. And Donald, you want to take it from there? What happened?
Well, we came here and it was so beautiful. We thought we'll never be able to get in this house. The landscaping was fabulous, and we just really wanted it.
Donald got a teaching job at Redwood High School, and we had saved money, me from my job and also from our Peace Corps experience. But about 5 years later, we could not have afforded it because the prices went zooming.
We were interested in building a second unit for possibly some caretakers in the future, because we just went over the threshold to 80, and we were thinking about the long term, and we looked at alternatives, retirement home, and we decided that wasn't a good fit for us. We'd like to stay here. So that was the initial thing, and then we had some other thoughts along the way.
You know, I've always been interested in affordable housing, as has Donald, and we know, having worked with teachers, how difficult it is sometimes for them to find housing that is close to their employment, and we feel it really important that teachers find housing in their community. When you get to know your community, you're more apt to get to know the parents and the kids in a way that you wouldn't when you live in a remoter area. We had in mind always to convert the garage. But as far as design is concerned, Teresa, the architect, had ideas. She suggested moving the entryway off to the street side, which really affords the tenant a lot more privacy. Getting all my creative ideas in play and learning from the architect and the contractor, and then having to choose the exterior lighting and the interior appliances, and it was just a lot of fun, colors, and you know, I loved it. Donald knows I was royally entertained.
She commanded the computer, so it was her job. We would very much encourage everyone to have a second unit. So we don't have enough housing in California, and it's how are we going to function? How is the economy going to work when we have no workers in a place like Marin County? But in addition, there's a lot of benefits. Some people probably could benefit by having a second unit and making extra income out of it. And others might enjoy the camaraderie of someone, especially an elderly person who's alone, might enjoy the camaraderie of having someone in close proximity. There's lots of things to consider.
We really get to know each other even better. We just had twins born down the street, so because we've been here so long.
Teeth are chattering.
I'm chattering.
My teeth are chattering.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I thought it was saying I was chattering. Instead, it says teeth are chattering. But okay, enough of that. But yeah, we're excited because we have new twins, born about 3 weeks ago.
So there are 3 other videos as well on the webpage.
And Martha, when was that you worked with the Donals, right? With that particular ADU? Do you want to?
Yes, they finished it in 2019. And it was approved. They got it was before we changed the process. So they got an ADU permit to convert that existing space. And they've been renting it out for about six to 8 months, I think.
It's a very sweet story. Very nice. Yeah.
Charming couple.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they really wanted to rent it to a teacher. So when it was completed, they sent letters to all of the local schools advertising the unit for rent as well. And there is a local teacher that resides in it. Okay, so that concludes the presentation. So if anyone has any questions about the ADU Marin project or anything ADU related, I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, commissioners, Martha has opened herself up to questions, so I guess I'll start with you, Margaret. Do you have any questions for?
Well, what kind of responses have you gotten other than from people who have gone to the workshops that you did?
Well, we definitely get a lot of questions from the public inquiring about ADUs. We've noticed a pretty significant uptick in the last, I would say, year on people exploring ADUs and interested in learning more. So we have continued to notice a lot of interest.
And what's the range of the building, the permitting costs that people go through?
So it depends. For some ADUs, you apply straight to a building permit. And for those, it is the building permit cost. And then there are also some fees associated with public works fees and fire, if there's fire sprinklers. For a conversion of space, the total combined fees can be as low as 5,000 to 8,000. And for a new detached structure, they are more significant, probably closer to about 15,000.
Okay, Margaret, anything else?
Nope, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Rizzo.
Well, I'd like to say I attended the ADU conference call, and Martha did a fabulous job representing us in our breakout room. I don't think there was a question she couldn't answer. And thank you very much, Martha. And she's been very helpful for me on some of the projects I'm working on in my professional world. But I don't have any questions per se. I think this is a great program, and that couple was so cute. It was a fabulous story. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's very good. Dr. Bundy.
Yes, Martha, I did have a question in regard to this project, I guess, in particular, but I've sort of been asking for a general better understanding of parking requirements for primary residents. I understand ADUs don't need it if it's within a half mile of walking distance of public transportation. But what happens when a primary home with legal parking, say one covered and one uncovered, but out of the setback, or even a two-car garage, converts the garage to ADU? What happens to the parking requirement for that primary home?
So there was a provision in the recent state legislation that you could convert a garage to an ADU, and you do not need to replace those parking spaces elsewhere on the lot. So we have not seen that occur yet, but it is possible that down the road someone could submit an application to convert their garage, and then potentially they would have no parking spaces on site.
But that would be acceptable because it was done in the practice of creating an ADU in the existing garage.
Correct. A homeowner couldn't convert that space as part of their primary residence. That would not be allowed, but it is allowed to convert it to an ADU.
Okay. I did have a question. I've had a couple people ask me about ADUs or trying to do a project where they wanted to create a maybe detached office or attached office. And I've encouraged them to think about creating it as an ADU so that even if they're currently planning on using it as an office, that it would be available to be used as an ADU in the future. Am I on solid grounds by recommending people do that?
You definitely are, and it's actually in many respects easier to construct an ADU than it is to construct, a detached accessory structure. There's some allowances for exceedances to lot coverage and floor area and reduced setbacks. So it is, I think, important to look that maybe the current homeowner doesn't use it as an ADU, but it is creating a potential housing unit in the future for a future user.
Okay. I agree with James. I think this is a good program, and this county website has been put together very nicely. Thanks for all your work on it and information that you have for us. Those are all the questions I have.
Thank you, Dr. Bundy. Phyllis, do you have any questions for Martha?
Well, Bob asked the question. I was going to ask about the garage conversion, but from what you said about the idea of if someone needs an office and the suggestion of building as an ADU, what would be the requirements to make it an ADU and not just a room that would be used as an office?
Well, it would need to include both a restroom and also a kitchen. So there obviously are added construction costs to do that. And then the ADU would also need to have a separate entrance. So if it's a detached structure, obviously that's achievable. But if it's attached to the primary residence, it would need an entrance separate from that to the primary home.
Okay. And I have a question for Adam, basically on the ADUs. We had that new ordinance with some new rules following the state, but we did have the clear story windows in there, and we saw how there was a problem this last time. Is that going to remain in it, that requirement for the clear story windows, or is it going to be something where you don't have to ask the next door neighbors permission to have other than a clear story window?
No, it's definitely still in there. It's going to take some time to see how it plays out, and I think Martha can add to exactly. I can't recall if that was the one where we say if you get your neighbor's permission, then you don't need design review, but you can obviously still request a design review even if your neighbor is opposed to it, and then it gets evaluated on sort of the privacy impacts finding. But is that correct, Martha?
That is correct. And I'd also add that, there is, privacy is one of the concerns we hear a lot of from homeowners. And, I'm just recently reviewed an ADU that's 4 feet from a side yard setback. And there originally were 4 kind of normal size windows on that elevation, and they changed them all to clear story because of that standard. And, I anticipate if they were regular size windows that close to their neighbor, I'm sure the neighbor would have had concerns. So I think there is value with that standard, but obviously it's something we'll continue to evaluate as we process more applications, and maybe in the future there's a change to the distance. But I think there is value to it.
That's all I have, Peter.
Okay, thank you. I think that the website is really quite simple and easy to operate in. So kudos to everybody for that. I'm curious how many ADUs are sort of in the hopper now. I think a year ago there was something like 8 that you were projecting, and I would bet that number's gone up at this time.
Yeah, so far for 2020, there's been 4 building permits have been issued, and there's several more that are currently under review by planning, and a couple additional that they've submitted building permits. So I would anticipate by the end of the year, I think it probably would be around 6 to 8 would be my estimate. But there are quite a few ADUs that we know about and are just kind of waiting on an application to be submitted. So I think each year I would anticipate there would be kind of an uptick in the number of ADUs.
Right.
And I would just add, I think the big one that is getting closer to a building permit being issued is the Robin Drive subdivision, which would, as you know, has 8 ADUs in that project. So they're working through resubmittal and building permit comments on that project, but we expect it to be, I would hope it's issued this, before the end of the year.
Will they actually start before the end of the year?
It's unclear at this point, but I think given the amount of grading that needs to be done, it depends a lot on the weather,
right,
what kind of winter we have.
I'll come back to you in a second, Margaret. So what I see is that this is a turn to have this ADU Marin project release the website and sort of ramp up public awareness. So what else goes along with this? This is sort of a push just for all over ADU awareness.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to that. I mean, Yeah, I think clearly this is one of the ways in which all of the jurisdictions that were participants in this project and why this was, I think, successful from a collaborative standpoint was that we all see this as a way of actually increasing housing units in Marin County, in our communities, with very little change to the character and the community sort of makeup that we see, that we know is sort of concerns, especially in single family neighborhoods. So it is a strategy. It's one that's been supported by our council and this commission in the past as we've adopted housing elements. You know, we have a lot of policies that sort of speak to encouraging the development of ADU for that reason, and that it is a potential significant source of housing production in the county. That is one of the tools that we have, along with other housing development goals, such as multifamily housing development that we're also working on. So it's sort of a multi-pronged attack in a sense, to meeting housing production goals for Marin County, and we were happy to be part of that with the rest of the communities. And I think it's also helpful that we were able to share experiences across jurisdictions and sort of talk through, see what everybody else's policies are and rules are. And I think that's another important thing to point out on the website, is that actually every different city's zoning regulations and rules particular to ADUs you can access from this website. So it's sort of a one-stop shop for people in the business or just people curious about what the rules are elsewhere.
Right. Are you trying to drive this to a certain level of ADUs in the town of Corte Madera? Do you think that there's a goal you're trying to reach or anything?
Martha, you want to speak?
I don't really have an answer for that as far as like a number. I mean, I think there still is, I think, a lot of sites that could support an ADU, and it does help us reach our housing obligations. So there's a lot of value. But as far as a goal for the number, we haven't really come up with that.
Yeah, I think it's just the awareness and the more proactively sort of trying to make it easier for people to even start the process and consider how to do this. And I think that's a big barrier on the ADU front, because a lot of if you're a homeowner, it's not the first thing. It seems can be daunting for a lot of people to just start considering this as a real option. And so this is really an attempt to try to overcome that barrier a little bit.
That's really great. Just a sec, Bob. Margaret had a question.
I do. I'm trying to phrase it. What's the time frame for an ADU? I mean, when it goes through the planning commission, there's a time frame. You have to move ahead by a certain amount of time and finish it after you get your permit, and you have to keep moving along after you get your permit. Is there any similar kind of time frame that once you get a permit, you have to complete the ADU?
So once you have a building permit issued, you have certain amount of time to hit building inspections. I believe it's 6 months in between inspections.
I think the new code actually switched it to a year for most projects, but yeah, the 2019 code, I think, switched it to 1 year. But it's also at the discretion of the building official to extend those, so there's no sort of municipal code requirement that is sort of mandated in the municipal code.
Years, you're saying.
Sorry?
So given what we know from previous experiences with that time frame, it could be up to 3 years.
No, it's not the same, because that's a municipal code provision specifically regarding planning entitlements, whereas the building code governs sort of the expiration, as it were, of a building permit that's been issued. And And that's at the building official has discretion as to whether and how to extend those permits. A lot of times we may require somebody to pay a fee to extend, or we send out letters that your building permit is going to expire, and then people will contact us and ask for an extension, and we would grant it without their, we would just extend those permits. At some point there may be an expiration on it, but again, it's at the discretion of the building official. There is no sort of municipal code standard or even in the building code a standard. It is really governed by the building official as to when those things are extended, when there's a fee for reapplication required and whatnot. I will say the only other thing that some communities have is such as Tiburon and Belvedere, and we've talked about this in the past, is that they do have actually, I think Sausalito as well, they have requirements as to when, after issuance of a permit, there is a definitive a requirement that construction must be completed by a certain number of years, I think, or maybe 18 or 24 months, depending on the jurisdictions, one of those cities. So they have a specific municipal code special ordinance that says construction has to be done once the permit's issued in a certain amount of time, or else there becomes penalties and financial penalties.
That answer your
Corte
question?
Madera doesn't have that ordinance at this point.
Well, it just strikes me as being, well, very similar to an issue that we came upon before, where there's a lot of leeway for, people to be making decisions without an objective standard for those decisions being made. Maybe there'll be a fee, maybe there'll be another year extended, maybe, and my neighbor didn't do it, so why should I? And that kind of thing goes on. And I also think that, if you go and, I mean, I can see a lot of reason something like that could be abused. If I go and I say, I'm going to build an ADU and I have this plan and I pay the fee, and I might be doing it just so that I could sell my house and say, look I already got permission to build an ADU and it increases the value of my house because this is already done here. You can buy my house and you get extra rental income too.
Right. And we see that. Yeah. That's, for example, 155 Summit. That was a primary house. It wasn't an ADU, but they have got approval to build that project and are looking, that's on the market now with the plans approved. So that happens quite, I mean, that's not, we're not alone in that. That is something that we see throughout communities.
Well, I think there was also, when we were talking about ADUs previously, I seem to remember that there was some discussion about it being abused in other ways too. I'm trying to think of exactly what it was and I can't, but if you build it as an ADU and then turn it into part of your main structure within a certain number of years, or you can't, or you can, something like that. Somebody might use it as a backdoor into extending the space in their house.
Right, and I think that was on Christmas Tree Hill, and because there is a limit on the number of ADUs that could be built per zone, and so we were actually closing that sort of loophole with the last ordinance, and I think we effectively did that.
Okay.
In fact, it doesn't extend the number of houses for rents, which is the purpose of an ADU, to broaden the number of units we have in the town.
Right.
All right, Dr. Bundy, you had a question.
Yes, Martha. has there been any abuse of the ADU ordinance from the standpoint of homeowners doing Airbnb with this? Have there been any reports of that from neighbors? And how are you planning to deal with that if that happens?
Well, there is a requirement that an ADU can't be rented for less than 30 days. So if we were made aware that a ADU was on Airbnb, then it's something that we would follow up on, and it would not be allowed.
Okay.
Phyllis.
Yes, Adam, you talked about Belvedere having into their ordinance that something has to be finished within a certain amount of time, but don't they also have an ordinance that says it has to be started within a certain amount of time after receiving the permit? Because if I remember correctly, and maybe you remember, Peter, there were people who had a building permit, and after 3 years or something, they hadn't started anything, and they lost the right to go ahead and build.
I think they handle it by the finish date, and that essentially says you better start pretty soon, or else you're not going to make the finish line. So I don't think there is a required to start construction. They just say here's the time you have to finish the project, and you know, that forces the start date to happen at some point.
Right. Yeah, they have a one extension is possible through an application, and then after that you don't get an extension. You have to apply again. So
Corte Madera.
Mr. Rizzo.
Yes, Dr. Bundy had brought up a question about parking earlier, and I know there's a requirement for the ADU parking that even if you lose your parking for the main residence, and if you're not within 30, I think a half a mile of a bus stop or some kind of mass transit, isn't the ADU required to have one parking space regardless?
So there's also a exemption that if an ADU is created from existing space, you do not need to provide a parking space for the ADU. So in the case of a garage being converted, it would be existing space. So the ADU does not require a parking space. So in that case, potentially you could have 0 parking spaces if a garage was converted.
Yeah, and my second question is regarding there's a lot of talk about having the project being built, but is there a requirement to actually rent these out after they're built?
There is not. We do have a requirement that they can require annual surveys. So that is something that we plan to do to get a sense of how many ADUs are being rented and also what rent is being charged. So we can kind of understand if they're below market rents, but we do not have a requirement that it has to be rented out. And, you know, we also find in some cases, people have family members living in the ADU, you know, grandparents or, you know, parents, or maybe potentially kids that have returned from college and haven't quite fully launched. So even if it's not being rented, it, you know, it still potentially is providing housing from someone or someone who needs it.
Thank you.
All right. What would you like to have as parting words for us to recognize or acknowledge about this?
Well, I mean, I guess if anyone has any suggestions on ways to promote the webpage in this project, we'd be, you know, happy to hear that, or, you know, any final thoughts?
Pass on to your neighbors and promote it. I mean, yeah, I think it's, unfortunately, I think obviously we were planning to do more of an in-person workshop and have you know, people get together and sort of talk about, you know, do more of the handouts and sort of informal gathering type of thing, but we can't do that. But fortunately we have the videos and the website to promote. So it's a matter of just getting the word out. I know there's a lot of stuff that is, we keep sending out to folks in Corte Madera regarding this and that, and it's a lot of information. So this one may have sort of not risen to the top of people's emails, or they may not have opened them all. So, you know, it's just really word of mouth. And if you know folks who are interested in this, and there's now, we view this as like a tool, right, Martha, just to give people sort of a starting point to really start exploring this and get some ideas, and maybe that sparks something, you know, and that's really the point here. And I think we've seen it. One of the examples that we used for starting this project, I think, was the San Mateo County ADU had a similar website that they all worked on together and saw a lot of good success with it down there, just as a promotional tool.
Phyllis, did I see your hand go up again?
Yes. In response to your question and what Adam and Martha just said, it's an excellent, thing to look at. And I wondered whether or not the two of you had thought about doing a presentation at the beginning of a council meeting, because I would think more people probably are watching the council meetings than our planning commission meetings, unless there's an issue that they're particularly concerned about. And this would, at the beginning of the meeting where they have, I think it's first thing on the agenda before even people asking questions on things not on the agenda, that it's not that it's so very long that will take up half a meeting, but I think that would be a good way to get some word out.
Thank you. Yeah, that's our intention. It's just we're going to see if there's a room on some upcoming council agendas to do that. I mentioned it this meeting at the community chat today. I was hoping to do that last week to promote the webinar that Martha attended, but actually we got a really good turnout for that, so that was very encouraging. I think 150 people or something like that.
That was the largest of the three.
Yeah.
Have you guys put this the webpage link up on the Corte Madera website?
We have not done that yet, so we definitely will link it to our ADU information on our webpage.
Yeah, it's really good. It answers a lot of questions that people seem to have whenever they start talking about ADUs, and particularly that cost calculator is really kind of a nifty little thing.
Right.
It's very good. Okay, so if we don't have anything else, does anybody else want to continue any ADU discussion? No. Okay. So
Great work, Martha.
Yeah. It is.
Yes, agreed.
Let's see. I guess there was only one council meeting since the last one that we had, our last commission meeting that we had. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay,
that
and
was
that's the one
last.
I watched the home key meeting primarily. Everything else in the meeting was was breezed through, I will say, till they got to the home key, and it was a plethora of commentary. I would say probably 2/3 against and 1/3 for, and there were some people with very striking commentary against the home key project, including the fear of sexual assault by a homeless person, all the way to just general security. But it was clear that the notification process was not done well. Phyllis, of course, can beat that one up pretty well. Todd ran through the timeline of what happened and why it happened, and then how they're responding to the community. And his speech was about trying to find a definition of success for a response to the county, and that the town response looks like a successful response. It has valid commentary and a valid process for getting to a resolution. But the problem is that the town doesn't really have anything to say about it that I can tell. You know, but everybody's asking the town, what are you going to do about it? So that puts Adam and Todd in the crosshairs of this thing. But one of the solutions that people brought up was screening of the tenants, and there seems to be some sort of concern about privacy regarding that. There's a suggestion of having a security oversight person there on site and security cameras. And there's not a plan for rejuvenation of the property yet. It seems like it's moving forward all too fast. But the people for the home key were mostly people who really can imagine what it's like to be homeless, and that the managed properly, that the homeless project would not be a threat to the neighborhood. A couple of people spoke about the fact that they've been involved with similar projects, and there's never been any issue with similar projects. So yet to be proven. I'll be quiet and let Adam contribute to the discussion.
Thanks, Peter. I thought that was a really good summary of the meeting and what we heard and we continue to hear. There's been a lot of conversations on this this project, over the last month, and it's evolving, I think, and I think it's really helpful to see the statements made at the Board of Supervisors meeting by staff today, also by at the community chat earlier today at 4 p.m. That was both Mayor Beckman, Eli, and Todd had a lot to say about that this afternoon at 4. I don't want to rehash everything there, but it is evolving. I think what's important, the next step, I think, is it's worthwhile that to note that, for example, the contract with Catholic Charities, which the county is, I think, is almost completed in terms of their negotiated, will be out by the end of the week, because the Board of Supervisors, that's the next step. They would actually have to approve the contract with Catholic Charities. And so in there, we should start to see the things that the county has been telling us that will be included in terms of staffing and security and those sorts of things in the interim period. There's a lot more, I think there is also a joint press statement or news release that the town and the county put out last Friday, which had the sort of the commitments of the things to work on, and that including funding for exterior site improvements. So I think those are encouraging. I think the challenge is, as you say, we just need to continue to push on those and make sure that we are getting the commitments more than just verbal at some point, get to actual seeing these things actually occur and happen. And that's the real key to that, I think, in keeping the sort of the pressure going, is to create this working group or task force. I mean, we keep calling it different names, made up of county staff, Supervisor Rodoni's office, town staff, and most importantly is a group of residents. So we did put out a request for applicants, and I think we're looking at maybe 3 to 5 residents to be part of this working group, to really provide direct line of communication, represent sort of the concerns, and have teeth in sort of resolving and getting the answers that I think are not there at this point because of the rush process. And that's the goal. I think that was in those keys, or the definition of what was described last Monday night as the the keys to the success of this, that those things need to be in place, and the work has to continue. And so, that's what we intend to do. And so I think we're not by any means, I think the mayor's used the term out of the woods in the past, but it's like, let's continue to work hard at this. And so we're going to continue to do that. And I don't see, there's been no indication that the county's not willing to do the things that we've asked them to do to make this successful. But obviously we're playing catch up as a result of the missteps in the process. And so that's the frustrating part.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And then I guess the only other, actually, I don't have any other items at this point to report on. Trying to think of, I was going to talk about the tentative agenda items for the next week, unless there are any other commissioner reports, but we do have some items that we likely will have on the December 8th meeting. And a couple being, one is we're trying to get in front of an application to you related to a new tenant at the Village that would take the place of where Restoration Hardware, that store, currently is. So that would be an exterior site facing the parking lot, which would require design review. So that likely will come before you. And then we're also looking at a park identification sign template that has been through the Park and Rec Commission, but because it is defined as a town project under our new process, meaning that it would have required a sign permit under the zoning ordinance, it will be coming before the Planning Commission as a town project, and following, you'll be seeing a town project report and be making a recommendation to the town council on that. And so I think the idea, though, is, well, actually, I'll leave it at that. I don't want to get into the details. It's more of just a informational sort of update on the next agenda that we will be having a meeting on December 8th. So hopefully everybody can attend. Obviously, the next meeting in November, we're going to be canceling because that's Thanksgiving week.
And then there's Dr. Bundy's request to talk about construction.
Yes, and so if I may, I included a brief memo just reminding the commission how this works, and that includes Commissioner Bundy's email requesting that this go on discussion of whether to put this onto a future agenda. And then I asked the commission if they could to also take a look at the discussion that the town council had of just about a year ago, a little bit more than a year ago, in relation to the noise ordinance, where this issue of construction hours came up in relation to the noise ordinance. And so I tried to, I think specifically there was a little bit in the October 1st meeting where it was discussed with the town council, and then there was a more direct conversation about that with the town council at the October 15th, 2019 meeting. Sorry, I see a typo in my staff report or my memo, where that was specifically discussed, and the idea at that time was to set policy so we could align our planning commission conditions of approval and our planning commission sort of policies with the town's noise ordinance. One other thing I did want to share with you with regard, before the commission sort of discusses whether to put this on a future agenda, is the general plan language with regards to construction hours, just so you're aware of that as well. And I think it should be my browser here. Okay, hold on. So can everyone see that? So there is a policy PSH-5.7 from our 2009 general plan. As you know, a lot of our general plan policies and even their implementation programs can be more generalized. This is one of those where it's actually a directive. It's more of a shall. Construction activities shall be limited. So I just wanted to make sure you're aware of that before having the conversation about whether we want to have a discussion about construction hours on a future agenda. And so this one is essentially what we did in the town in the updating the noise ordinance last year, followed this same general plan policy. And that's currently, as we discussed at one of the last meetings, what we're operating under. So with that, I think really this conversation is for the commissioners really to decide whether, after reviewing some of this information and Commissioner Bundy's request, whether to request that staff place this on an upcoming Planning Commission agenda.
Okay. Let's see, we need to take commentary from the commissioners on this. So Phyllis, you have your hand up.
I just want you to clarify a couple of things, Adam.
Sure.
You are saying that after looking at this, after looking at Bob's email, then the commissioner should decide whether or not it should be on the agenda. Is that?
Yes. Yeah, and that's
Okay.
exactly. That's my understanding. That's what we're trying to accomplish here, is just not a discussion item. This is not for discussion purposes. It's really just to decide whether we should have a discussion about this on an upcoming agenda.
Right. And my comment is, and I didn't like this when it was put into the rules and regs, and I'll repeat it. Excuse me, I've had laryngitis last week. I think when a commissioner asks for something and gives some information, that as a courtesy, it should go on the agenda, and not that the other commissioners should vote on whether or not they'll allow it. And I just want to say that for the record. I'm very uncomfortable with the idea that a commissioner doesn't have the right to add something to the agenda. It's not like in some places you've got the people on the commission or the council adding 2 or 3 items at every meeting. This is not a usual occurrence. So I just, as I say, just wanted to put that into the discussion.
Okay. Any other commentary from the other commissioners?
I have a comment.
Go ahead, Margaret.
I agree with Phyllis, probably 200%. I find that the attitude is to discourage us from putting things on the agenda. That's the feeling that I've gotten. Maybe it's not what was meant to happen, but I have personally, and see it here now too, feel that commissioners who should be given some amount of not so much respect, but we're not here just for our own fun, and we're here to help the town. And if we feel that something is important enough to discuss, I think that it should be a lot easier to have everyone else discuss it. I think there's a certain amount of respect that has to be given, that we would find something appropriate for discussion. It's not like we're going to put anything bizarre on the agenda. And I think that in general, yes, I think we should discuss this item. I think it's an important item. I have tremendous respect for Bob, and I think he thinks it's an important item. And I think that things ought to be a lot easier for us to talk about on this commission. That's what I.
Peter, may I add one more thing into that, what Margaret
Okay.
said?
Go ahead.
I think it's important that we differentiate between commissioners, individual commissioners requesting something because we have knowledge from working on things and you can see where there can be glitches. Then when the public asks, when a member of the public asks, I could see us discussing whether or not this is something that is appropriate for us to take up or the timing of it. But when commissioners ask, I think it shouldn't be up to the other commissioners to decide. We're not children who need permission.
I just need to respond to those comments because I just want to be very clear that, this was not a staff-driven document that was created. This was all of the commissioners participated in creating the rules and procedures for the commission.
Well,
I think we even went over this. It was not something that, we went over this in detail at the time. So I just want to make that clear. This was not something that was driven by staff to sort of set up a procedure that was intended to be sort of an obstruction for commissioners to put something on the agenda. But the intent was to have a process in place so that it, one is, I think, I will say that I know at the town council level, I think it's similar to what the town council has.
not quite, but it's as onerous because I've been discussing it with Eli. But I do not want to infer that it was the staff. It was the council for the town. And I'm happy to say both of the attorneys who were involved are no longer with us, so we don't have to worry about hurting their feelings.
Yeah,
No,
but I
it
do
wasn't
think
staff because I had written something and they changed it. Well, I sat there in your office and Peter was on the phone over this, and the two attorneys were insisting that it should be this way.
okay, so maybe we should be talking about the future agenda item should actually be the rules and procedures, modifying the
I
rules.
said I wasn't going to update them this year. Can we wait until January so I can stick with what I said and they'll be done in 2021?
I get it, but I do think there was I know at the council level, and I think that carried over to maybe the planning commission rules and procedures as well, but there was a intention to at least have if staff wanted to bring forth some reason why they felt like it was going to be challenging to just, to get to that item for another couple months or something because of other obligations, that they would have that opportunity to actually state that. And so, it can
that
work.
Makes sense, Adam. That's not the problem. The problem isn't that Bob asked, and because Bob asked, it should definitely be on the next agenda. I mean, it would be nice, if the information was there, yes, it could be. But as you say, if there were other things that were coming up that had to be done, then it would be put on an agenda 2 months in the future.
And I think that was really the intent, was sort of it was really a scheduling provision. So we could have an opportunity to talk about scheduling as a group. And so, but in any case, here we are. I understand the concerns that have been raised, and I think we should move and just discuss. We're happy to, in terms of scheduling, if there's no issues with putting Bob's request, at the next meeting or as soon as possible. But
if I could ask for one more clarification on what you showed us, what was it, 5.7?
Yes.
We're now looking at 4.2.2 is what I see.
Well, that was the rules and procedures from the staff report, and this is.
I just wanted to see on 5.7, reading this, it says, unless an exemption is first obtained from the town, does that mean the exemption is in one direction only? That the people who are doing the construction have the right to ask for an exemption, but the town itself cannot? I'm trying to clarify the wording.
Yes, that was our understanding of that language. And if I'm now clicking on the actual noise ordinance as written, and so you can see how that was implemented in the noise ordinance. Can you see this provision?
Yeah, what you're putting in blue.
Yeah, so it says basically here's the noise ordinance language currently. And again, this is about construction related noise can exceed the otherwise required decibel levels. And so it obviously says holidays, that's not included in this, but it does say that that's the time period. And then it says this last section to increase the hours, so exempt, and that was based on the language of you can go sometimes, for example, the village has in the past wanted to do some night construction, but it was interior to the lot or something like that, and they had to meet deadlines. You know, they're always trying to meet the holiday deadlines for getting things open. And so that was the provision, and an example of where potentially we could exempt it and allow them to do more hours than otherwise they could under this noise ordinance. So yes, going back to your this provision, I think the operative word would be an exemption from those hours. Would be more, you would get allowed additional time beyond those restrictions.
If I may ask one more question on this, Peter.
Okay.
What, I'm looking at the reverse, because it talks about weekends. Let's say construction is going on near a house of worship. Can you say that you don't want Sunday construction? Or in the case of the
that would
Jewish
be
faith,
part of
Saturday confused?
That's part of
that would be part of the discussion we would have
Right.
at a future agenda item if you wanted to have that.
Okay, I'm just asking, trying to figure out how the exemption works and in what direction.
Okay. I'm going to ask Mr. Rizzo if you had anything to say about this agenda item.
Yeah, firstly, process-wise, what we're going through right now with Dr. Bunny's ask, is that the same for a hearing or a business item? Just any agenda items got to go through the, so like the informational business item that we talked about, the ADU, I mean, couldn't Dr. Bunny's ask be kind of the same thing? I was just wondering if it was an informal kind of discussion item, does it need to go through this, it seems like it's a 30-day process, if not more.
Yeah, per the rules and procedures, that's what we have right now.
Okay, and then has this noise ordinance gone through the whole process already through the planning commission and then through town council? Because it seemed like, I mean, there's a lot of discussion about the noise ordinance and leaf blowers in the video. Construction obviously can be subdivided into a lot of things, from a homeowner to actual contractors and heavy construction. Obviously, this is something that if we put on the agenda, we probably can get more elaborate on.
Yeah.
But
it did go directly to the town council. Since it wasn't a zoning ordinance, it's actually in the chapter 9 of the municipal code, is a municipal code amendment. Under peace, safety, and morals. So this was not something that actually was discussed at the planning commission last year before it came to the town council. I know it was a town council priority for a long time.
Okay.
Not really construction related, but primarily related to leaf blowers. And then it got into a revision of also the problems with the enforcement at the time and the decibel levels that made it very difficult to regulate and enforce noise ordinance as a whole. And so that was what was modified. That was what was changed last year.
And if we wanted to change this process, like it sounds like the majority of the commissioners, is that something that needs to be formally applied?
It would be
to the town
requested.
council to,
Yeah, you would have to, it would be ultimately, I think if the commission ultimately wanted to, it'd be different if it was a zoning amendment, frankly. I think you'd still probably leave it to staff to try to make sure that do what we wanted, you know, going down the right path before we embarked on a large scale project. But something like this would likely be a request to the town council from the planning commission of consideration of basically changes to the noise ordinance.
so if we vote to have this on our next meeting, is that something we can discuss as a group? To
Yeah,
maybe
so I
put
think
forth as a group,
I think that's a good idea. This is also a reason for the future agenda, having this process in place, because I think what we want to do also is define exactly what the parameters of the agenda item would be at another meeting, so that in fact we're not, you know, as you all know, we have to adhere to, if we say it's going to be a discussion, it can only be a discussion. We're not talking about making a request for a to the town council for amendments or something like that. So if it's a discussion, that's what it would be. But I think that's also important, is that we get the agenda correct on that, the agenda title, and we sort of, you guys can give staff at least some direction as to how we should agendize that item.
thank you very much.
Because he brought it forth, I left Mr. Commissioner Bundy's request for last. So, Bob, you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I'm actually okay with this process. I think the idea of asking to put it on the agenda as sort of a discussion item to see if this is something everybody else would really like to see addressed is a good process. The staff really does such an excellent job of researching some of these agenda items as far as what other towns are doing, that I think if we can give them some direction on what our concerns are, what our thoughts are in regard to this. And the primary reason that I wanted to bring it up was the last approval at 403, where we, requested no construction on Sunday. And I think we also modified the hours on Saturday. And my thought was just that we should come up with perhaps a recommendation on new hours where work is not done on Sunday on a regular basis. And so we don't have to get into discussion with each project as to how we're going to modify the hours. My other thought about, not allowing work on Sunday is that most of the projects that I've seen in my neighborhood, unless it's just landscapers, I don't see construction really being done on Sunday. And I guess it's because the workers really need to at least take one day off a week. But the idea of having a discussion among the commissioners as to what individual concerns might be or what the staff might need to address would be the direction I'd like to see this go.
Okay. So with that said,
Peter, just real briefly, one thing that did come up in the town council, which was interesting, was homeowner construction on Sundays. How do we delineate the construction, the commercial contractors to, some homeowner that wants to do siding with his saws and his compressor? Is that something that would be similar, or are we talking about just commercial projects?
I don't know, Adam. There was discussion about that at the council level.
Yeah.
I
think they felt it was difficult to, that was a challenging one. They won't, but yeah, I mean, one way to do this would be to put on a general discussion of construction hours at an upcoming planning commission meeting, we can get into, maybe we can ask for direction on, at that meeting during that discussion of direction to staff about, you know, what sort of a concept level modification to the noise ordinance would look like, you know, and we could get into some of these questions about, so discussion and direction to staff maybe is how I would agendize this, rather than sort of thinking we're going to come out of the next meeting with an actual request or recommendation to the town council.
So with that said, I think we're all in favor of it. Is there anybody that is not in favor of having this on the agenda? No.
No. Okay.
So it's a voice vote of all say aye on 1, 2, 3, aye.
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 Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So then we have the sticky subject of meeting minutes. Phyllis, are you going to want to?
Adam said he was going to punt it. I'm not quite sure what he means, but I am asking to table it. And under the parliamentary procedure, motion to table does not take a second and does not have discussion.
Okay, so not a parliamentary expert at all. What does that mean then for the
Vote on it?
A motion to table takes precedence over all other motions. As I say, it does not require a second. There is no discussion as you do with most motions. And you can just vote, make a motion to table to a time certain, or make a motion to table until such requirements are met.
So you don't express why you want to table? That's not part of it?
I was going to do it under the part about our requests and comments, you know, from the back up under that section. I'll be glad if you want to, if you're willing to go back to that section, I can then answer the question. How's that? Okay.
Well,
all right, under, you know, commissioners' announcements and requests, etc. These minutes are an embarrassment. We are shortening the minutes, making them more to the point, as is the city council. And the way these minutes were written, it looks like members of the community came before us and mentioned concerns and opinions. And we just went ahead and voted, never said a word or anything. It's like we made up our minds in advance before we even got there, and we were going to vote whatever the staff report said. It makes us look bad. It does not give information to people. You know, people get their information in different ways. Some people do want to sit and watch the whole video for whatever length of time it is. Other people have a specific thing they'd like some information on. And there are ways to have shortened minutes. It's much better the way it was done at the council level. If you look at the most recent council minutes, though there are some improvements I would make if it was up to me. But the reason I want to table it is these are not minutes. This is like a flashcard being put in front of you, you know, with the title or 2 or 3 words. So that is, as I say, I will make, if we go back down to the minutes, I will make a motion to table both sets of minutes until such time as they are rewritten to be a better reflection of the meeting they are addressed to.
you don't have a way to do that, do you, Adam? We don't have anybody in place to actually.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we're going to use the town council minutes as a model. So if that's not
Mm.
reflected, then we can take another look at it. We do have two different people doing the minutes, one at the council and the planning commission. So I have no concerns
Okay.
coming back to you with the minutes. So we're happy to take another look at it if that satisfies the commissioners. But I will take a vote. So I'll start with Commissioner Bundy.
What am I voting on?
To table
Whether-
the minutes.
I vote to table.
Okay. Commissioner Bendel,
Aye. To
Commissioner
table.
Rizzo.
Aye.
All right. Vice Chair Metcalf
Aye.
and Chairman Chase.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. So we'll table the minutes. We'll come back after taking another look at them and providing some more detail.
Thank you for that. I think that the brevity of these minutes is a little extreme. So in any case, I think that's a good idea. And Phyllis, I appreciate that you felt strongly enough about it to bring it forth like that.
Well, that's why I let both you and Adam know over the weekend,
Appreciate that.
rather than just dump it on you tonight.
With that said, I don't have anything else to say, except we can adjourn this meeting.
Mhm.
Great. All right. Well,
I vote to
Thank you
adjourn.
very much.
have a good Thanksgiving, everybody, and a good holiday.
You too.
All right.
And we'll be in touch soon.
Thank you.
See you in December.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Take care.
Good night.